Hello and welcome to Sport for Business. We are back for the new year and we are in conversation with leaders from across the sporting and business communities. I'm delighted to be joined today by John Long. He is a strategic consultant with Onside, and we're going to talk about the 16th Onside annual sponsorship survey. There's some great numbers, great insights in it. You're very welcome to Sport for Business, John.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Tell me something. The headline was unavoidable that the Irish sponsorship market is going to climb by a further 8% in 2022 to hit a figure of 195 million. That's within an ace of where we were pre-pandemic levels. Was that a surprise, or tell us a little bit about where the survey is coming from and the kind of people and the depth of insight that you're actually gaining?
Thanks very much, Rob. Well, we've spoken to over 100 sponsors and rights holders in Ireland. And as you say, it's the 16th time that this has happened. So there's a good read of what's happened in the past. And what the industry is telling us is that there is certainly source for optimism in Ireland, both in terms of what's happened in 2021 and what we project will happen in 2022. And as you say, the headline is that after that huge shock to the industry in 2020, when the size of the sponsorship market fell by 24%. It has bounced back in 2021 by 6%, and we project that it will bounce back by a further 8% in 2022.
Good numbers, and it's across a broad spread as well. I've seen the report. You talk about the number and the range of different deals that are being struck. Is the increase going to come from an expansion of existing deals, or is there room and capacity in the market for new initiatives to actually come forward?
It's a really good question, Rob. What we've seen this year is that in sport alone, the volume of deals has increased by 50%. So what that means is that we've not necessarily seen a huge number of massive deals, but there are a lot more deals taking place. Now, what we think that will happen in the year ahead is that there will be more deals. What we've got is around about 54% of sponsors saying they will be increasing their sponsorship investments next year, and only a very small minority saying that they will be reducing. And there's that bit in the middle there that say they're going to keep it the same. But with 54% saying they will be increasing, that's up from 41% last year. So we expect more people to be putting more money into the market.
That's going to be a very welcome addition to it. I know when we've worked with Onside in the past and gone to our network and spoken, there's a nice correlation between the sponsors on one side and the rights holders on the other side. And you've done likewise in this as well. Is there a difference in the level of confidence that's being expressed from both sides of that coin?
Typically, you'd see more enthusiasm from the rights holders or optimism from the rights holders than you would from sponsors. But what I think we've seen this year is that the sponsors themselves are pretty confident in what they're planning to do in the year ahead. And so, like that number I just gave you before, there are roots for optimism. But I think the other thing that we've seen from sponsors, perhaps more than before, is that 2 in 3 expect the deals that they do to be 3 to 4 years in duration as confidence returns from the market. That's longer terms than we would have seen certainly last year and at other times as well, which I think reflects strength on that side. And the other thing, just generally for sponsorship, is that those sponsors that have responded to the survey, they say that sponsorship will account for around about 21% of their marketing budget in 2021. And typically, as we've seen over the years, it is around about that number, but that's certainly a good number, slightly up on last year as well.
And in a very ever-changing media landscape as well, it's important that sponsorship would have not only held but advanced its position within that market. One of the other interesting things that you've looked at is the marketability of individual athletes, and we've been long advocates of the importance of women's sport. Last year was a wonderful year for that on so many different levels, and that's filtered through as well. What's the picture looking like in terms of the number of people or the individuals that brands want to be associated with?
Unquestionably, this was the breakthrough year for women's sport in Ireland from a marketability point of view, particularly when you look at athletes. 63% of industry professionals picked a female athlete as their most marketable this year. That's up 28% on last year. So real enthusiasm for those female athletes. And that's not just one athlete. You've got Kelly Harrington, you've got Katie Taylor, Ellen Keane and Rachel Blackmore right at the top in those top 4 slots, as well as other athletes as well, not far away from that, like Leona Maguire and like Katie McCabe in soccer as well. So huge enthusiasm for these female athletes as the most marketable, not just sports stars, but sports and entertainment stars in the country.
I tell you, one of the questions that always raises the most interest is any new sectors that are coming and getting involved in sponsorship. The world has changed on its axis significantly over the last 2 years, and it probably hasn't stopped twisting and turning in the wind as yet. But the traditional, sponsors coming from the telco world or the retail and the supermarkets, from banking, from insurance. Where are we likely to see any new growth coming in that?
Yeah, it's interesting, Rob, because we never know until it actually happens. And obviously, we've seen certain trends in other markets that haven't quite hit the Irish market as quickly or as prominently as they have in other parts of the world. And the most obvious one in 2021 was cryptocurrency, and particularly the cryptocurrency exchanges. So maybe we'll see something in that sector this year. But we mustn't forget that we will also see some significant ongoing investment from some of those categories you've talked about, like retail, like supermarkets, like banking, like insurance. We expect those to remain strong in the year ahead. And we call out sort of 4 broad trends around connections this year. The 2 that you'll hear lots about will be authentic connections and smart connections. And authentic means, sustainability, means cause and community. Smart is all about technology and creativity around that. But actually, some of the biggest sponsorship activity in this year might be in the other 2 areas that we talk about, which are tricky connections and fun connections. And tricky, that means that the big events that are taking place, like the Winter Olympic Games, like the FIFA World Cup, on the brand side, and how they really activate around those, with those taking place in China and taking place in Qatar, and some of the issues that they bring. But also on the rights holder side, if they do go into that cryptocurrency exchange world and some of these newer emerging technologies, who do they partner with, and to what extent? What rights do they give up in there? How do they involve those? How does that sit with the other partnerships that they have? Those aren't all, there's some attractive opportunities in there, but they're not always straightforward, and they come with risk as well. And what's the risk appetite of different right holders? And then that last area, the fun piece, we wouldn't be surprised at all if some of the most effective sponsorships in 2022, for all the talk about authentic and smart and technology, that a little bit of fun might just come into our world, particularly towards the summertime, as crowds hopefully come back to sports, and the summer sports, the festival type days, if you like, take place in those summer months. So watch out for that, I think, as well, and the ability to activate with perhaps smaller investment budgets in the sponsorship, but some real creativity when it comes to activation.
Well, we're intrigued by the tricky, and we do like the fun. It's always good to have a smart guide to actually bring us through this world of sponsorship as it develops and grows in 2022. We try to do that for all of our members, and we love doing it in partnership with you at Onside as well. So for the time being, and certainly not for the last time in the coming weeks and months, John Long of Onside, thank you very much for taking the time with us today.
Thanks very much indeed, Rob. It's been a real pleasure.